Hey guys, and welcome to Ozzie Reviews, and welcome to October's edition of Q&A. Now guys, we've got a heap of questions here, so we'll jump into them shortly. But first of all, if you want to be a part of this and ask me questions and get my advice, you have to be a member of Patreon. Patreon is simply a donation system where you can donate from as little as $1 a month. So click the link below here on YouTube and you'll be able to access that if you wish to do so. Anyhow, let's get into this month's questions. Now the first one we've got here is from Patrick, and he says, hey Ozzie, great review of the Sako M10. How did you get a hold of one? Well mate, I organised it through Beretta. They'd been promising me that for some time, and it finally came to light, and that's how I did it. So I got a loan because yeah, unfortunately I couldn't afford $20,000 to buy that setup. The next question you've got here is how far out do you think game can be taken with this rifle? Well, that's a good question, mate, because a lot of people think just because a rifle can shoot out to like a K that you can take game, or you should take game at that distance. I disagree with that completely. Anyone who wants to take game at a K, honestly, in my own view, doesn't really care about the welfare of the animal. And why I say that is because, even in my own experience with shooting at long range there, 1,000 yards or even further, you can't judge, or you can only judge to a degree for the wind, So you might put, say, 4 shots on target fairly accurately, but then the wind may change direction, and all of a sudden, from where you've got something in that real kill zone, like the heart or lung area, or the head, all of a sudden your shot goes off, and next minute, you've lodged around in the back leg of the animal, and then they just die a painful death. Then obviously too, if you're shooting at that sort of distance, you've then got to drive or walk to track that animal down, because obviously ethical hunting isn't making animals suffer in any way, shape or form. So, for me, like if you were using, an M10, or any sort of varmint type rifle, and you wanted to shoot, game at long distance, I mean, look, a few hundred yards there, like 400 yards, maybe out to 500. But look, most of the hunting shots that I've ever done, really, they're always between sort of like 75 and 125 yards. Sometimes it can go out a little bit longer than that, depending on what you're actually hunting. But in general, I would just be keeping it, under that 500 yards. I just don't agree with going right out there at distance, because there's too many variables that can cause an inaccurate shot, and then subsequently at the detriment of that animal having to suffer. I don't care even if it's a feral pest. They deserve to die instantly. There shouldn't be any suffering there. So that's my take on it. And the last question I've got here from Patrick is, you say, I've just watched the Four Corners program, what do you think? Okay guys, so if any of you are unaware of what happened there, Four Corners ran a program. It was fairly anti-gun, and a lot of people saw it that way. Excuse me. And it was about the lady down in Sydney who had lost her sister because she was mentally ill, so she went into a pistol range and actually stole a pistol, took it home with her, and shot her father, I believe. And then obviously the sister was then blaming shooters for that, which I look at that and I think to myself, well, why didn't you report her mental illness? Everyone knew that she was mentally ill from what I can see there. Why wasn't that reported straight away, that she was trying to go to a pistol club or something like that? You know what I mean? Like you can't just shift the blame onto shooters and go, oh, it involved a firearm, so we're just going to punish all shooters. I don't see it that way. Very much the same when that ex-police officer there in New South Wales was talking about a criminal shooting at him. Now, why I say criminal is because he was obviously a criminal. His firearms licence had expired, so therefore he was in unlawful possession of those firearms, and he shot at the police officer with those illegally possessed firearms. Now, I don't care whether they started out as legal possession. If for whatever reason that person had their licence suspended or expired or whatever, and it wasn't renewed, there's obviously a reason for that. So that person then, in my own view, crosses that line from being law-abiding over to being a criminal. So therefore it's not the problem of licensed shooters once again. And this whole argument of, licensed shooters just seem to be this group of people that just have to walk on thin ice all the time, and I disagree with that completely, because if you look at any other group of people, whether it's people who are into motorsports, archery, whatever it is, they can have accidents, deaths, whatever, and there's no real drama. It's not, oh no, let's just ban that, let's get rid of it. But when it comes to licensed firearm owners, you've only got to have someone with a firearms license do the wrong thing, and all of a sudden they want to punish, the other 1 million of us that are here in Australia alone. So I disagree with that completely, because you cannot legislate against people doing, the wrong thing. Sure, you can have laws and so forth in place, but you can't legislate to stop them doing the wrong thing, okay? If they decide that they're hell-bent on doing the wrong thing, pretty much all the laws that you have in place will just simply be broken. If we look at it in very simplistic terms, look at people who go out and commit murder. Yeah, it's an offence to kill someone, but people still do it, don't they? So you can only legislate to such a degree. And where I disagree with it all is where you go and punish the entire community, okay, we're talking about the shooting community here, because of the actions of a few. And if you look at 1 million people, okay, 1 million licensed shooters here in Australia, and you have 1 or 2 of them who do the wrong thing each year, for example. Now, I don't know, I haven't looked at the stats, because unfortunately the stats don't show whether people are licensed or not. So I'm just, using this as a hypothetical example here. So if you've got 1 or 2 licensed shooters that do the wrong thing each year, out of 1 million people, but you want to get rid of the entire amount of those people, you just want to get rid of their hobby or their sport, or their pastime, whatever it is, because of the actions of 1 or 2 people. Let's convert that over to, for example, people driving vehicles. Well, geez, we wouldn't want to touch on that now, would we? The amount of lives lost on the road each year. But people say, oh no, we need motor vehicles. Well, no you don't. Why can't we just have commercial trucks delivering things where private possession of motor vehicles isn't allowed? It's ludicrous, isn't it? Just as ludicrous as what it's like to say, well, firearms should only be possessed by the government. So, look, bit of a ramble with it there, guys, but that's my thoughts on the Four Corners program. It was really designed, obviously being anti-gun, but the real message there, I don't know if a lot of you saw it or understood the real message, but the real message was, hey, we want you to come back to the major parties. Dealing with these minor parties, oh, that's dangerous, we don't want that. And that's what it's really about. So guys, there's a lot of people in those major parties who are running scared, because they know that there's a lot of people out there who have simply had enough of the lies and deception, and that's why we're turning to smaller minority parties that will actually listen to our concerns. So that's my feelings on it. Now, the next question I've got here is from Edward, and he says, "G'day Ozzie, I'm looking at getting a Lithgow LA101, and I've already got a 22 LR, so not sure if I should go for 17 HMR or 22 LR. In your opinion, is the 17 HMR worth the extra dollars per shot over the 22? Would mainly be used for range, plinking and rabbits. Cheers." Well, mate, look, if you're using it mainly at the range, I seriously can't get past a 22, only because of the cost. You're going to be looking at double, or in some cases triple the cost there to use the 17 HMR over the 22. Couple of positives and negatives for both. Like, obviously the 17 HMR is a lot flatter shooting. You're going to get out there at distance, you're going to be able to shoot at 200 yards quite accurately and have a little bit of fun there, obviously at that extra cost. On the negatives of it, 17 is a pain in the bum to clean. I know there's people that say they have no problem with theirs, but just those small, thin 17 diameter cleaning rods, I find it an absolute pain. They also foul a lot easier than I find with a 22 or 22 Magnum. Obviously they're moving quicker, and it's also a lot thinner diameter. So they're the things that I don't like about it. But on the positives, yes, you can shoot further. And let's be honest, ballistically wise, they are superior when compared to a normal 22 LR. But when you're at the range, think about when you're at the range, you just want to plink and just have a heap of fun. So do you want to be throwing, you know, sort of about that 33 to 40 cents a shot, you know, down range, as opposed to somewhere between, you know, maybe 7 to 12 cents a shot, you know, for the 22, if you're just out there having fun. And with rabbits, let's be honest here, you know, you're only going to be shooting rabbits up to about, you know, 100 yards, 50 yards most of the time. 22, if you can't shoot a rabbit's eye out at 50 yards, then forget about it. You need to do some more practice, in my view. But yeah, I'd probably, look, it's a hard one because you've already got the 22. If you want to just have some fun and go for the 1.7 HMR, mate, by all means. And then if you don't like it, you could always sell it, and then you can get yourself another 22 if you wanted to. But look, I'm a big fan of the 22, so that's probably the way that I would probably lean. Now the next question I've got here is from Anthony. He says, G'day Ozzie, just a quick question in regards to suppressors slash silencers. Do you think that our draconic government will ever make them legal for all licensed shooters in Queensland? If so, would they restrict it to occupational shooting like New South Wales? Or would they allow recreational shooters as well? And how do you think they will control them? For example, a tax stamp like the US, or PTA, etc. Well, mate, here in Queensland, they are classed as a Category R firearm. Okay, so they're in with machine guns, tasers, you know, all the other Category R stuff. So if they were going to go down that line, I really think they'd have to recategorise them. So there's two options that I could see that they'd do. First, they'd recategorise them, so you know, you'd actually have an R licence, and it would be specifically for suppressors, which I really wouldn't want it to go that way, because that means a separate licence, another application. I find that, you know, just an absolute burden, because there's another licence you've got to renew and pay for. Or what they'll do is recategorise it, and they'll put it back into you know, whatever whatever category of firearm you're using it with. So for example, you know, A or B, or they'll just have it as some sort of accessory where you've got to pay a fee like they do in the US there, or like a federal tax stamp, which is $200 US. So that's sort of the way I see that they'd possibly go with it. But do I think that it'll ever happen? Mate, the facts are definitely there, and I know a lot of people will say, well, yeah, since when did they look at facts? But you know, we had in Victoria there, yeah, there was an independent study by the government. They paid independent researchers to do the study, and it was clearly there that the benefits far outweigh any sort of risk, and that was taking into consideration places like the UK, New Zealand, Canada, and also the US. Because what you got to look at is, you know, you look at these firearms that turn up, you know, on the news stories, you know, in like obviously print news and online and stuff like that. You know, you see all these cut down bolt actions and so forth. So what does that tell you? It tells you that criminals like concealable firearms. So, you know, if they've got a concealable firearm, do you really think that they're going to want to add, you know, about 6 inches onto the end of the barrel? Well, no, they're going to want to cut it down. They want concealability. And we're talking about licensed shooters accessing these, so I really don't see the problem here. I think that it will come. Look, I may be just very optimistic, but I do think that it will come, because there is just too many facts that prove the benefits of it. And also the biggest thing is the NFA, the National Firearms Agreement, does not specifically outline suppressors, okay? So there's no banning of them or anything like that. So that's why we have such changes in legislation from state to state. You know, like New South Wales, yeah, occupational shooters can use them. And, you know, very, very frustrating for myself, because, you know, throughout all the time that I've been doing occupational shooting, you know, I've had to knock back smaller properties where I personally think, in my own mind, that there's going to be a problem with shot noise, you know. So where a suppressor would have been fantastic for that. And anyone who you know, hasn't heard what a suppressor sounds like on a firearm, look, you can have a look on YouTube at different videos, but I mean, obviously, you know, I've been over to the States, you know, I've used firearms there with suppressors on them, and I can assure you that, you know, it doesn't just eliminate the shot noise, it eliminates a lot of the blast, but especially if you've got that supersonic crack, you know, of a high velocity round, you can never get rid of that. Even if it's low velocity ammunition there, you know, it's still very limited with your range with it, and you know, there's a lot of I guess variables to it, you know, to what will change the actual noise. But what I'm getting at is it does not sound like the movies with that boop, boop, you know, it's nothing like that whatsoever. Basically, the best way I can describe it is it pretty much brings a lot of the noise down to like a 22 going off, you know, so if that makes sense to you. So yeah, bottom line, mate, I know we got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but bottom line is I do believe that it will happen because yeah, it is very much on our side, the facts, and the fact that the NFA does not specifically prohibit suppressors. So that's why I think we'll get up on it eventually. When that'll happen, I don't know. Now, next question I've got here is from Mick, and he says, hi Ozzie, I've just purchased a SHS straight pull shotgun with a 5-shot capacity. I also own a Savage Axie 243, Marlin XTR 22, and Sterling single shot shotgun. I think you mean to say the Sterling single shotgun you've got there. I was considering buying a 30-30 or a 308 for pigs/deer, but wondering whether I really need it, as the 243 is okay for pigs and deer with the correct shot placement, and the shotgun would be okay for close work on pigs. I'm thinking it may be more beneficial to get something with a bit more hitting power, and the 308 ammo is no dearer than the 243. Would appreciate your thoughts. Keep up the good work with the reviews, mate. Cheers. And P.S. when will the orange blaze caps be back in stock? Okay, well, we'll get to that first of all. Mate, I do have them. I still have them. They never went out of stock. So I know we've got that sorted for you now, but just for the purpose of anybody else watching this, we definitely have them. So if you do want one, by all means, send me a private message and we can get you sorted from there. Now, as for your main question here, mate, I know you're in New South Wales, so see, up here in Queensland with deer, you know, you can pretty much shoot them with anything because they're classed as a feral animal. New South Wales, I'm not too sure on the current status of that, but yeah, very much so. 243 is a great caliber. Like if you're using, you know, those 100 grain Sierra Game Kings there from OSA ammunition, fantastic. You know, correct shot placement there, you'll pretty much drop any deer you want. I know there's arguments in Victoria have like minimum of 270 and all the rest of it, but I'm talking about realistic terms here. So if you do have a limitation there, or a caliber minimum, I would definitely suggest going to 308. If not, honestly, mate, 243 using like those 100 grain game pings, or another, you know, game or hunting projectile or load with that bullet weight will see you right. Now the next question I've got here is from Mitch, and he says, "G'day Ozzie, I'm in the market for a 22 rifle. I've been considering something like a CZ452 or a Sako Finnfire II. Ideally, I'd like to keep the price under $2,000. What are your thoughts? P.S. Love the show, mate." Well, thanks very much, Mitch. I appreciate that, mate. Look, it really depends on what you want the 22 for. You know, one of the common questions I get is, "I'm considering this," but you know, like there's so much like extra with follow-up questions I'd like to know. Like for example, are you using it for hunting? You know, or using it for range, or a combination of. But look, any of those firearms are fine. Now, the Finnfire II, I haven't shot it personally. I've shot obviously the Sako Quad, and look, it was fine. But the CZ452, I reckon, would have the edge with the accuracy. And you know, they're just a nice firearm. CZ, great value for money. So look, in all honesty, it depends on what feels best to you. I would go into a gun shop and I'd have a look at both of them, put both of them up to your shoulder, cycle them, see which one feels better to you, and then go that way. But look, if it was me, look, I really like Sako, but I know CZ is very accurate. So depending on what your needs are, would ultimately reflect which way you'd go in that circumstance. Now, next question I got here is from Matt. He says, "Hey Ozzie, looking for some advice for a new shooter wanting to get a 243 on a low budget, max of $1,500. I'm tossing up between a Howa and being able to get the stock and barrel I want, being wood and stainless, or going a Tikka and getting not exactly what I want with a blued synthetic. I know that the Tikkas are good, but for a new shooter, is it worth the money, or would I be better off getting the Howa and getting a better scope and more accessories?" Mate, the first question I got is, why can't you get a wood stock and a stainless finish on the Tikka, like the Tikka T3X Hunter, for example? It's stainless there with a wooden stock, so I don't know why you can't get that. Even if you were looking at something in a varmint, I mean, I had a Sako 85 varminter, stainless, so it was beautiful laminate wooden stock and stainless finish. So yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't have a look at them. So not too sure, mate. Send me a message and let me know. But just to answer your question, honestly, if it was me, Howa or Tikka, I'd definitely go Tikka. I just love the quality of it, the smoothness of the action. I've never had any problems with the magazines. Howa I have. There's been a few reviews where I've had problems with mags. Yeah, I'd be going for the Tikka. Next question I got here is very short and sweet from Kim, and she says, "Warwick firearm review, question mark." Yeah, look, it was supposed to be organised. It's one of those things, Kim, like I said with the last Q&A with the Sako. I mean, the offer's there. A company usually approaches me, you know, I'll agree to do it, or I'll approach a company and ask if they'd like me to review something, and then just nothing happens. Well, I'm not going to go chasing companies. I don't think that it's my job to then go chasing them to promote their product completely for free. I just don't see why I should be doing that. So yeah, I just don't know what's happening with it. I tried to organise it. I did I think an online post about it, and I don't know if I did it on one of the Q&A series before, but I spoke about how many times I tried to follow up with doing the review, but then just nothing eventuated. It was just promises. So yeah, look, I don't know. At this stage, it's definitely not on the cards. Now, the next question I got here is from Paul, and he says, "Hi Ozzie, just wonder if you will have more merchandise available in the future, and also if you might be running another weekend meetup event. Cheers." Well, mate, yes to both. So I've actually been trying to organise some new hats. So we're going to have the new edition hats, you know, coming in soon. So when I say soon, probably in the new year at this stage. I'm going to get more of the stubby coolers because people just absolutely love them. And when we were at the Shot Expo in Brisbane there last year, I mean, they just sold out, you know, almost instantly. It was the first morning. All the stubby coolers had just gone. So yeah, definitely going to get some more of them. I am working on some other stuff too, some really cool stuff, but I just got to weigh up prices and stuff there. So we'll see how we go. As for the meetup, yeah, probably next year I'd say at this stage as well, mate, we might run a meetup and you know, have a few promotions and all that sort of thing. But like I did last time, you know, the tickets will be limited. You know, we only had 100 tickets available last time, and obviously they were on offer to Patreon supporters first of all. So yeah, obviously that's the way I would do it again, and you know, to give you guys who helped me out the first opportunity to come along to a meetup. Next question I got here is from Walter, and he says, "Hi Ozzie, great reviews mate, really enjoying them." Well, thank you mate, I'm appreciative to hear it. He says, "Can you please tell me if the 4570 is a good bush gun, mainly for peaks? Also, in your opinion, would I be wasting my money if I bought a Hornet in 1.7 caliber, considering I have a Sako 223? Cheers." Okay, so your first question about the 4570. Oh yeah, it's a good bush gun for peaks, that's for sure. In some circumstances, mate, probably overkill. You know, you knock a pig down the 4570, it's certainly going to stay down. You know, obviously with correct shot placement as well. Look, I don't know if you saw the Marlin review I did with the 4570. Just type that on YouTube. You know, just do Aussie reviews 4570 and it'll come up there for you. Like, geez, they have a lot of punch, especially when you're using those Horndy, those 325 grain FTX rounds. I mean, they just had a massive amount of punch. So honestly, you could pretty much knock over any game you wanted here in Australia, and any peak here in Australia, that's for sure. Only downside with it, mate, is obviously, you know, it's a fair bit of recoil. So if you're recoil sensitive and you haven't shot something like that before, just be aware there is a fair bit of recoil. And on top of it as well, pretty expensive. You know, you're looking around about $4 a shot. So yeah, that'd be the thing that I'd sort of consider if you were looking at getting into one. And look, you can get other like lever action firearms like 30-30s and stuff like that that are just as good on peaks. You know, and you won't be having to spend as much on ammunition. So not too sure on your personal circumstances, but I'd certainly keep that in mind. Now, your last part of your question here on do you think it's worth getting a 1.7 Hornet? Now look, I've only ever shot the 1.7 Hornet once, and that was when I did the Savage review. And look, like a pleasure to use. I mean, there's just absolutely no recoil, and there's a fair bit of energy going down range for a little varmint round, which it is. You'd really have to ask yourself the question at the end of the day, do you have a need for it? In other words, is it just going to sit in the safe after you've taken it out a few times, or are you going to use it a fair bit? So, you know, do you want it just for the range, just having a bit of fun? You know, if you were going to use it just for that, I'd say, look, just stick to your 223, honestly. A lot cheaper to run. But if you're actually going to go out after game, and you want to go after game where you don't want as much damage as what happens when you hit it with a 223, you might be going for smaller game or something like that. By all means, it shoots, you know, very flat. There's no two ways about it. And you know, it's a really comfortable cartridge to use, but do you have the need for it? That's what I'd be asking yourself, you know, at the end of the day. Because the cost of ammo, mate, you're looking around about $1 a shot or more. So, you know, when you compare that to 223, and you can get like the OSA ammunition, which is loaded with hunting ammunition for around, you know, 70 cents a shot, there's just no comparison. So you really have to just see whether it's something that you're really going to use at the end of the day. Now the next question I've got here is from Tyrone. He says, hey Ozzie, are you able to explain the storage requirements in Queensland? Do bolts and magazines have to be locked in a separate compartment from the firearm like ammunition does? And what do you do with lever action or brake action firearms where there is no bolt to remove? Okay mate, so have a look at the weapons regulation. Okay, section 94 talks about storage for people with a firearms license there. It doesn't apply to the collectors, dealers, armourers, that sort of thing. They have different requirements. So what you'll find there is it does say that you have to store the firearm unloaded with the bolt removed or the action broken. So for example, if you've got a bolt action there, well, you can just simply remove the bolt. But if you don't, like you say here with a lever action or brake action, well, what do? Well, the legislation says clearly just to make sure the action is broken. So in other words, all that means is that it's not closed. So you can get, like the TAPCO chamber safety flags. I use them all the time. So if you've got a semi-auto handgun or your lever action or something like that, you can put one of them in there, or you can just simply open the action and just leave it stored that way. Okay. As for the bolts and magazines, well, no, they don't need to be separated. It certainly doesn't say that there. So usually a lot of people will just place them, on the floor of the safe or, just somewhere next to their firearm, so they know which bolt is for which firearm. What I'll do, mate, is I'll just add to that as well. For the storage requirements in Queensland, this is very basic stuff, and I may even do a video on this for you guys if you're interested. If you are, please comment below and let me know. But with the storage requirements, basically if you have A, B or C firearms, it can be a safe made of solid timber or steel. If it's 150 kilos or over, then it doesn't have to be bolted to the floor or to the frame or whatever in the premises. If it is under that, it does have to be bolted. Okay. Now if you've got category H firearms, or for those of you who do have category D firearms, then regardless it needs to be made from steel. Okay, so you have to have a safe made from steel, and it has to be bolted regardless of the weight. Now there is also another, this is probably getting a little bit more on, but there is another part in the legislation where an authorised officer can actually give an exemption. So the reason why I believe a lot of that came in is because, you know, some people had like 2 and 3 ton bank safes, you know, like X vaults and that at their premises, where obviously that wasn't, you know, bolted to the floor, and, you know, they couldn't even, you know, put a bolt through it. They couldn't even get a standard drill through it, so it was impractical to bolt to the floor. So I know there is an exemption there where you can apply and actually get an exemption for your alternate storage method, so to speak. But that really wouldn't apply, you know, just with the basics here, but it's just to make you aware of it. So that's what you need to do. Okay, so the next question I got here is from Thor, and he says, sorry if I'm a bit late to the party with a question, but what should be included in a Cat C collector's license covering letter? Cheers. Well, mate, good question, because it depends on what aspect of collecting you're into. So, for example, if you wanted to collect firearm magazines, now most people know in the legislation here in Queensland that if you wish to collect firearm magazines, you know, like AR-15 mags, you know, Steyr mags, any of the different magazines from different conflicts, you know, so it might be, you know, M1 carbine, that sort of stuff. Well, you need to have the appropriate license to collect that. So, you know, that's why you would put down in the covering letter that you wish to collect magazines, and you understand that it's an offence to possess these without the applicable license, so that's why you want to do it. But then you'd also talk about different areas that you are interested in. So, for example, if you're very interested in firearms from the Vietnam or Malaya conflict, then you know, you'd put that in, and say that that's what you wish to collect, or you like to read a lot of historical books, you own a lot of history books on that particular you know, conflict, that sort of thing. You just need to explain what it is you want to collect and why it is, okay? Also, it doesn't hurt to put in there that you know, you're a member of the SSAA, or you might be a member of Shooters Union, or you might be a member of a particular historical club, for example. Obviously, you'd have to fill those details out. If you're going for temporarily inoperable handguns, you must be a member of a historical club, okay? So that'd be why you'd need to put that in there. But for the Cat C, which you've said here, mate, just put down what it is that you want to collect and why. It's pretty straightforward. Talk about the history of how long you've been into firearms and had an interest, and keep in mind that it doesn't mean just while you've been licensed. You can still have a genuine interest in firearms and be reading books about it, you know, many years prior to actually having a license, for example. So yeah, just put in that information, and you know, it's pretty self-explanatory. Now the next question I've got here is from Daniel, and he says, hey Ozzie, I watched your video on how to access private properties for hunting and sighting in rifles, etc. I tried what you said, but unfortunately I'm getting no luck. Do you have any more ideas? Well, mate, yeah, I get very mixed reports back. I've had quite a few people get back to me and say they've had quite a bit of luck. And then obviously there's people like yourself who haven't had any luck. So the only other thing I could think of, mate, is maybe the SSAA Farmer Assist program. That'll get you a foot in the door to a couple of properties there where you can shoot. But what you might find then, especially if it's in your general local area, you know, you can build up the rapport with that particular farmer, and then not only shoot on that property, then you'll probably find you'll get access to neighbouring properties. So that'd probably be the only other option I could suggest. So the next question I've got here is from Fred, and he says, hi Ozzie, I'm shopping for my first air rifle for target shooting and small game hunting. What's your recommendation? As I don't want to ask friends, as I'll get too many varying opinions coming back. So I just want to get it right the first time. Thanks. Well, Fred, mate, it depends on what you're doing. Yeah, like, are you going to be hunting regularly? What are you hunting? You know, there's a couple of questions there, or follow-up questions I'd like to know, but look, in general, you pretty much get two types of air rifles now. You can get semi-autos, and you can have them on Category A here in Australia, so that could be a big benefit to you. If you're looking at that, look at the FX Revolution. They have a really good name, some pretty good accuracy out there to like 50 metres or 50 yards, and obviously being semi-auto can be, you know, useful depending on what you're hunting. If you want just sort of, you know, the standard break action, single shot, you know, just load one time, or one pellet at a time, like a lot of us had as kids, then there's various different brands there. The ones that I've used personally in the latter years have been Walther, and obviously they've been really good, fairly high quality, and I can recommend them. But yeah, it just depends on what you're doing. For me personally, if you're going to get into the real small game, hunting and that, I'd probably go to just a 22, as in not a 22 caliber air rifle, an actual 22 long rifle. So and obviously access the different type of ammunition there, from your very low velocity ammunition to your high velocity ammunition. But if you don't want to get into a 22 and you specifically want an air rifle, they're sort of the two options I'd look at. I'm never going to profess that I'm an air rifle expert. I have used them, but I'm certainly not right into them, because I do prefer just going into a rimfire firearm. Now the next question I've got here is from David, and he says, is the Sako Finnfire II better than the Sako Quad? I'm only using 22 LR. And there's another part of your question here. For Rimfire benchrest class, has a scope power limit of 6x. Am I allowed to use a 3 to 9 by scope and set it to 6x? Thanks. Well mate, we'll start off with the first part of the question here. So the Sako Finnfire II versus the Sako Quad, pretty much the same. The only difference there, obviously, you have the interchangeability of calibers there with the Sako Quad. So if you're only using 22, I probably wouldn't go that way, and you could just go for the Finnfire II. Now, I've not personally shot the Finnfire II, so I can't comment on the accuracy, but I can't see them making great accuracy out of a Sako Quad, but then terrible accuracy out of a Sako Finnfire II, if you understand where I'm coming from. So I think they'd be pretty much on par accuracy wise. I just don't think that if you're just using 22 LR, it'd probably be pointless going for a Sako Quad. Having that interchangeability capability, you're just not going to use it by the sounds of it. And for your last part of the question here on the 3 to 9 scope, setting it to 6 power for benchrest competition, mate, look, you'd have to check with the organisers of where you're shooting that. So whoever the shoot captain is of the actual comp, ask them about it. But generally, in the past, I've had no problems with it. Now I'm talking a few years ago, but generally in the past, I have had no problems. I've shot different comps there where they've just said wind it back to 6 power and you use it on that, and that's fine. So, but once again, you'll have to check with the shoot captain. Now the last question I got here is from John, and he says, hey Ozzie, as always, thoroughly enjoy your reviews, mate. There are a lot of noise on the web regarding 22 LR barrel lengths. Many shooters of 22 LR are now claiming that the optimal barrel length is 16 inches and not the 20 inches as once thought. In addition, the argument is that you do not achieve higher muzzle velocities nor better accuracy from the longer 20-inch barrels over the shorter 16-inch barrels. In fact, their findings have shown that, dependent on ammo, the 22 LR muzzle velocities can slightly decrease due to friction of the projectile moving through the longer barrels. I'm not really sure what to make of this, but I'd like to know what your thoughts are on this debate. Cheers, mate, and keep up the awesome vids. Well, John, thanks very much, mate. I appreciate the praise there. Now, this is a very interesting question, because I've also, faced this sort of problem when I've been looking at different barrel lengths. Now, when you look, okay, we'll run through a couple of things, and I'm trying not to confuse people who are listening to this, because it can be very confusing. Like, you look at like the Anschutz, so we've got like a 23-inch barrel. For the Anschutz 22s. Now, you can get the shorter ones now, but accuracy-wise, they shoot brilliantly, don't they? So how do they do that? Does barrel length interfere with it? Now, obviously, if you're going to be shooting in a competition there with Rimfire, now, I don't know how far you're going to be shooting with it, but say, for example, okay, we're shooting at 100 yards. Now, normally when you're using high-velocity ammo out of a 22 and you shoot out to 100 yards or more, okay, now it's going to be hyper velocity, okay, when it leaves that barrel. But once it gets out there to 100 and beyond, it starts going through that transonic zone back to subsonic, and that's where you will lose your aerodynamics and your accuracy. Okay, now that's the same there for centerfire as well. There's no difference there because it's the law of physics. It doesn't matter whether it's rimfire or centerfire, you can't escape that. So if you've got a longer barrel and it is starting to slow that ammunition there, a lot of the time when you look at the actual stats on it, some high velocity ammo out of longer barrels does get slowed down. You know, you put it on a chronograph and it's shooting, you know, the same as standard velocity ammunition, so that could cause better accuracy there, especially at longer range. So is it the barrel length in itself that's causing that better accuracy? Well, no, it's not. It's the physics behind it, okay, because it's actually slowing it down. So mate, there's a really good website, okay, and I'm not going to just flick you to the website, I'll talk about this more, but ballisticsbythebench.com, okay, so ballisticsbythebench.com, and then put in /22.html, okay. Now, I found them some time ago when I was looking at this same problem, and the guy there has done a marvellous job because they've got several different rifles, different barrel lengths, even pistols, and they shoot a variety of different 22 ammunition and they chronograph it and show you the results. And from what I just said, when you talk about, you know, the longer barrel length slowing the actual ammo down, look, that rule goes out the window sometimes because, for example, they've got a Kimber there with a 22-inch barrel and it's shooting one ammunition faster than what a shorter barrel is. You know, when I'm saying shorter, I'm talking like an 18-inch barrel as opposed to like 22. So, you know, that theory sort of goes flying way out the window and it confuses you even more. So generally what I like to do is I like to have the barrel for the job that I'm doing. So for example, like if I'm using a 22 and it's going to be for the range and I want for accuracy and everything, yeah, you know, I want an Anschutz rifle, you know, 22, 23-inch barrel, you know, even if it's the shorter tack version. Hey, Anschutz do their homework, so I'd have no problem in shooting competitions with it. But if I'm going to be using a 22 and it's going to be for out hunting, and I'm going to be shooting, you know, sort of 50, maybe 75 yards, I'm going to be using high velocity ammo, well, I want something that's pretty lightweight to carry around with me. So I don't mind a 20-inch barrel, 18-inch barrel, even a 16-inch barrel. They all do a good job. And when I've sort of experimented even with my 1022 and I've used 16.5-inch barrels and then also 18-inch barrels, there's really been no difference. And when you have a look at this ballisticsbytheinch.com, you'll have a look at it and you'll go, geez, there's nothing in it. And at the end of the day, mate, there really isn't. Between 16 and 18 and then the 20, the difference in it with feet per second with the velocity is just so minimal, really. Like, honestly, in real world terms, I just don't think it's going to matter. When you're using something out in the field, you know, to shoot rabbits or whatever, it's really not going to matter whether it's a 16-inch barrel or an 18-inch barrel. What it comes down to is the biggest thing with rimfires, and that's finding the correct rimfire ammunition that your rimfire loves, and that's the whole key secret to it. I mean, I can shoot ammunition through some of my 22s that's just ridiculously dead on, you know, under half an inch there at 50, and then I put it in another 22 that I've got, and then all of a sudden it's shooting, you know, a 2 or 3 inch spread at 50. So what it comes down to is you just need to find the correct ammunition, you know, for your rimfire and stick to it. If you do want to go down to a shorter barrel there, like 16 inches or whatever, it's not going to make any difference there with the accuracy. Okay, for what you're doing, unless you're shooting way out and you want a real long barrel on a rimfire, that'd be the only time I'd see that it'd be a real concern. So, mate, I hope that's answered your question, but please have a look at that ballisticsbytheinch.com. Because it's probably the only website that I found when I faced the same problem that gave me all the information that I really wanted to know. And then at the end of it, you know, I just went back to the advice that I've given you now and just got the different rifles that I want for the circumstances, and then just found the ammunition that it loves and then stick to it. Okay guys, so that's it for this month's Q&A. It's probably one of the biggest ones we've had so far. We've got quite a few questions we've had to get through and a little bit long-winded, But I hope that it's answered a lot of questions there, and you guys too that are just even watching this who haven't submitted questions, I hope that you've picked up some information from it. And look, if you've got other thoughts on any of the questions asked and stuff, like by all means, comment below. All that I ask is you just be respectful and polite, and we're happy to hear your comments. Alright guys, thanks very much for watching, and until the next Q&A series, we'll catch you then.